All right, we are live again on the COVID-19 law series by the China ASEAN Legal Cooperation Center, the CALCC. And welcome to those who have just joined us. This is by the page, under the page of the CALCC's, and we are seeing the viewers joining us, and welcome. And if you're watching us live now, please help us to share this page to others so that others will be able to watch this live as well. Thank you so much. And on this topic, we're going to discuss the legal landscape. Today, we'll discuss with a friend from Spain. And as usual, we wait for about 2 to 3 minutes for the audience to join us. Then after that, we will start our session. Welcome for those who just joined us. Thank you so much for joining us today. And this is a session of understanding the legal landscape from Spain. Good to see all of you. I see even the speakers from the previous session is following us. I think there's a lawyer from Indonesia who's just joined us, watching us. Thank you so much. Again, welcome, and I'd like you to share this page on your page or on your Facebook profile so that more we are able to share this knowledge with more people around the world. Good afternoon in Malaysia time, and a very good morning to Alonso.
Very good morning to you all
Yes,
as well.
right, and to Siang. Hi. The
Hello,
time
good
now.
afternoon.
Hi. The time now is 4 o'clock in the evening in Kuala Lumpur time, and I understand that it's 10 o'clock in the morning in Spain. So,
Exactly.
all right. So, good morning for those who are watching us from Spain, and a very good afternoon for those who are watching us in the ASEAN region. This is another series of the legal discussion where we invite our good friends around the world. They are the lawyers, they are the legal experts, and we chat with them, and in not a very formal, but rather in a casual setup where we understand from the ground, because they are actually on the ground and they are based in respective countries, and they actually discuss with us on the situation in their respective countries. So we have run this series for I think about 10 sessions already. So we've spoken to a lot of our friends from Singapore, from Indonesia, from Laos, and today we are very honored to be able to have our friend from Spain to join us. So for those who have joined us, please drop us a comment on the comment box on the Facebook if you're watching us live from the CALCC's website, the CALCC's page of Facebook, so that we know you are here. And at any point of time, you feel that you want to ask certain questions or clarification, or you want to give your comments, feel free to do so by putting up at the comment bar so that we are able to pick it up for you. All right, so you are about 5 minutes about 5 minutes now. I think we shall start our discussion today. I think first of all, I would like to invite Alonso, Mayordomo. Okay, we can call him Alonso. To perhaps say hello to the viewers online watching us live now. Yes, Alonso.
So, hi to everybody. Some of you might be familiar with my face as I spent some time back in Kuala Lumpur. And for me, I'm very happy to, even though it's by electronic means, to be back in my second home, which is Malaysia. And I hope you enjoy to get to know more about the legal landscape right now in Spain, the implications of the COVID-19, and the economic measures that have been implemented somehow. I will briefly touch upon them, and I hope you enjoy everything we
Right.
say here.
Alonso, currently, I am made to understand you are based in Madrid, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, all right, all right. And on the line, we have our Miss Go Xiangju. So, Miss Go, please say hello and introduce yourself to the viewers online that are watching us live now.
Sure. Hello. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon for the audience in Malaysia and Buenos dias to the audience in Spain. My name is Siang. I'm a practicing lawyer at the capital city of Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. And I'm a corporate and commercial lawyer with my main practice area focused in real estates and companies law. I'm also the branding and marketing director of CALCC. Yeah, that's all.
All right, thanks, Xiangju. Okay, so we have more friends joining us on the line now. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching us live now. I think just now the first Rajan Paul say, "Hola, Alonso." Hi, hi, hi.
Well,
That's in. And we have our friend Ramit Ko say, "Hi, Alonso, Xiangju, and Dato Te."
hi,
Hi,
Rami.
hi, hi. A very good evening. We are so
Hello.
hi, hi. We are so happy to see our friends joining us online. And feel free to drop the on the comment box that we are able to pick up your comments because this will make the session more interactive, right? So as we mentioned just now, Alonso spent some time in Kuala Lumpur, and Kuala Lumpur is his second home. But currently, he's based in Madrid in Spain. Okay, my name is Teh Tai Yong. I'll be the moderator today. So I'll ask questions. So more importantly is to hear from the two speakers. Now, we shall start the session today. First of all, I would like to ask Alonso, how is the situation in Spain now, in particular in Madrid now, currently?
All right, all right. So if you allow me to, I'm gonna give you like a brief summary of the most relevant circumstances that took place starting at the beginning of March. So people may have like a general overview in their minds. And having said that, I'd like to say that we started to see the issues from the COVID-19 from the news, right? But we didn't do anything as such against it till the very beginning of March, right? So talking about Madrid from business perspective and also taking into account what the administration did, I like to point out that back on the 5th of March, if I'm not mistaken, I saw in Madrid that one of the big companies here, EY, they decided to send all their employees to their houses to do telecommunicating because at so they started with one of these measures. And this is something that it's relevant to note because ever since they changed, starting to move, and all the companies started to request their employees to telecommunicate, right? So after that, on the 11th of March, which being almost 1 week after that, 5th of March, the community of Madrid, the government of Madrid, decided to take all the students, well, to stay, to take, to request the students to stay back in their houses. So no more school open, no more universities, no more academies, and that suddenly meant that 1.5 million students only in the community of Madrid would have to remain home. So I recall in my office the next day, people asking questions as to what should I do in my daily life because now my kids are back home, and issues started to come up. But right after that, on the 14th of March, so the government decided to declare the state of alarm. Okay, that state of alarm came alongside the enactment of the first royal legislative decree, which actually came on the 17th of March. But by that time, the things totally changed in the city and in the country. Only basically groceries stores, supermarkets could remain open. Meanwhile, the other businesses, such as, I don't know, clothing stores, right, bars, restaurants, they had to shut down. We did this in order to avoid the expansion of the virus and in order to start to take measures against it. Of course, at the same time, many people were already infected, and this curve was still and was starting to sharply increase. So at the same time that many businesses were shut down, it's true that the courts were also somehow closed and shut down as well. Their activity really decreased, and things for us, right, for lawyers, changed, especially if lawyers had to deal with courts on a daily basis, because at that time the situation totally changed as well. So afterwards, now we were in the 14th, 15th, 17th, 16th of March. Afterwards, at the beginning of April, the situation was even harder, let's say, because the government actually requested those workers, those employees who had no essential jobs, to stay home and do not go to the countryside, do not go to the streets to perform works or whatever. So everything that was not essential should be stopped as well. And during those 10 days, or even almost 2 weeks, Spain really was shut down, as you can imagine. But in any event, all these were measures taken in order to avoid this huge expansion of the virus. This has been the situation for the last 1 month and a half. Recently, we've received somehow good news because the situation is getting better, let's say. Last week, last Sunday, if I'm not mistaken, on the 26th of April, this was the first good news in that event because the lockdown here has been quite severe, and people had to remain home. It was not possible for us to go for a walk or to do sports. We could only leave our houses to go for groceries, and we were encouraged to do groceries once every 7 or 10 days. So in the meantime, everybody was remaining home. And as I was saying, in Sunday it was possible for the kids to go out to the streets. Kids below 14 years old, as long as they were coming, well, they were walking around with one adult, which would be any person living with them, the parent, the father, the mother, maybe the grandfather. That's depending on the situation, right? But taking into account the measures about the social distancing and everything, they could still go out for a walk and do maybe some sport or play around. But this already started back in Sunday, so 3 days ago. And supposedly now, this 2nd of May, which is coming on Sunday, we will be able, when I say we, it's like everybody will be able to go for a walk and do individual sports outdoors, so long as the situation remains the same. All right. So still, we have to see how this all is gonna develop, and if the situation maintains its current way, we might be able to be in the streets a little bit of time every day from the 2nd May onwards. And on top of all this, because we get to hear news on a daily basis in Spain, and I guess than in every single part of the world. Yesterday evening, we were also told that there would be like an implementation of a 4 phases scenario in order to come back to our normal lives. And this 4 phases scenario will start next Monday, 4th of May. Each phase will have like a 2 weeks time, supposedly, and if everything goes well, because if there are issues coming up, they will change and they will apply different measures, most likely to the different regions of Spain. But as I say, next 4th we start the first phase, 2 weeks, then second phase, then third phase, and so on. So by the end of June, supposedly we are intending to be back to the normal life that COVID-19 will allow us to carry out. But as I said, this is very good, very recent news, and we will see how they do actually develop. Because in the end, people may ask, how are they going to do in the restaurants or by the beach here in Spain, right, during summertime? We don't know yet, but of course we will try to take any social distancing measures to be healthy and safe.
I see. You mentioned the 4 phases. Has the government come up with a clear guidelines as to what is phase one and how is it different from phase two and phase three and phase four?
Yeah. So as I said, this was released yesterday night, and even though it's not that sure that they will be implemented as such, because it will depend on each scenario.
Yes.
The phases, of course, would open our scope more and more. So let's say next week, I have not memorized the measures that are still available for us, but let's say that next week we can do sports outdoors and we can move around in the city within 1 kilometer from our house. But maybe in 2 weeks' time, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was for the 18th of May, people will be even able to travel within their province. So there are many people, right, that would be able to go from one town to another, maybe to visit the family, but that will be from, and at least from the 18th of May at least.
I
And for
see.
instance, for me, I'm from the south, I'm from Andalusia, and but now I'm living in Madrid. I would not be allowed to head back home during these days, so I will still have to wait for another phase in order to open the whole transportation that we might have in Spain.
Yes, because if you look at the statistics and Spain having 200 over 1,000 confirmed
Yeah.
cases, but it looks like it's more stable now. And you mentioned that the restriction for people to move in Spain started on the 14th of March, right?
Yeah, yeah,
14th of March. So that's like 4 days before Malaysia. We have this movement control order, the MCO.
yeah.
So we are locked down almost the same time. You guys uh, had 4 days extra, so all of us are working from home. Now, you mentioned something about court system where the courts have decreased the
Tayo,
activity in.
before
Yeah,
we go into the court,
yeah,
I
sure,
find some while we are on the lockdown topic,
sure.
at this part of the world, we actually read something very interesting on the news. I'll show you. I'll share with the audience what we read from the newspaper. Let me see. Um, okay, this.
Is this a
Can you pull
surprise
up,
for?
Tayo?
Is this a surprise for Alonso?
I'm sure Alonso knows this. Okay, this one is actually saying that the dog is actually very tired, and we have more like it actually says that the owner has already walked the dog for 38 times today, and this one is the dogs for rental for to walk the dog, and all these very interesting. And this one is say that if I don't have a dog, what about if I walk my sheep, and things like that. And this is walking the little toy dog. So I
Mm.
understand that in Spain, uh, apart from going to the groceries and doing the necessaries, walking the dog is also exempted from one of the exemptions. Is that true?
Exactly, but it's not walking the dog as such. But people were allowed to bring their pets, right? Let's say downstairs, very close to their apartment, so the animals could actually do their needs, and that would be cleaning up and everything. But they were supposedly also allowed to remain close to their houses, because in the end, if the police would ask you like, what are you doing here,
Uh,
you should show your ID in which
uh, uh.
the home address would be set out, and
Okay.
therefore you have to be within that
Okay.
area as well. But yeah, they were allowed
I
to keep
see.
them exactly. But there have been many jokes going on, as you
I
can see
see.
from that.
Okay. All right.
All right. So now we would like to take some time to acknowledge the viewers who are following us live now. Thank you so much for watching us live now. This is a series by the China ASEAN Legal Cooperation Center (CALCC), where you bring the legal experts and lawyers and the legal practitioners around the world to share with us what's the situation on the ground in their respective countries. And yes, we like to pull up some comments from the viewers. Let me just see. Yes, I think we have friends from Ramit we have put up just now, and Chong Xiangju, love your hair. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thanks. Thank
um,
you.
Hello, Taeyong, wearing a new earpiece. Yes, I am. This is a gift from Dato Ricky. Thank you so much, Dato. Hi, Alonso.
Right,
Yes,
Dato?
hi. Take care. And very crystal clear moderator. Thanks for the earpiece. And how do you straighten your hair, Xiangju? Okay, so these are
Oh my God.
all the friends are watching us. No, I think it's good people are following us, and again it's meant to be something casual, so that you feel home, and this is how the format of this. This is not something that
Yeah.
is too stressed up and tight. All right, so back to the question just now. You mentioned that the court has decreased the activity in Spain. So how are you dealing with the situation? As in, are you able to conduct online hearing like what we are doing now, or are the parties able to submit the claims, or everything of the claim or legal action has to be postponed?
Okay, all right.
Alonso?
So yeah, so as far as I know, and I would like also to point out that here in Madrid, what I mostly do is arbitration, because my firm is focused on ADR as such, especially arbitration, right? But still, we are quite familiar with the courts, and my colleagues have been able to tell me how the situation has been developing over the last weeks, and the situation and the courts, right? The courts, their activity has decreased a lot, and
Mm,
only the so-called essential services are provided. And you may say, Alonso, which are those essential services? Well, being and trying to narrow down this concept, it would be any judicial proceeding which, in case it's not carried out, it may create an irreparable harm. All right. So, considering that aspect, which is quite broad, but still it tells you which are the things that might be proceeded, we could highlight that those issues related to gender violence or measures to protect the minors are still considered, right? But taking into account that the activity has decreased sharply, the courts have taken and implemented different measures for face-to-face meetings or in-person tasks that have to be done in courts. And for instance, as you can imagine, you could easily see that there are screens all over the courts. The social distancing needs to be taken care of, and therefore, they're complying with all these sanitary or healthy measures. Additionally, as you were asking to me before, Dato, yes, there are some online hearings going on. It's not the how would I say? It's not normal even for us, in courts,
mm-hmm,
because this is something that is being now doing because of the situation, right? But still, it's important to highlight that back in 2003, it was already available to use online means to, for instance, carry out a witness statement, right? If that person is in another country or is in prison or is whatever, the judge might have ordered to do so by online means. So the online hearings can be carried out as long as, I would say, that the main principles of law, right? There is no detriment of the due process, and there is no detriment for the fair trial. Meaning that if there are issues in that regard, the party may even appeal, saying, you didn't take care of this, and that, and therefore my client was not accessible to do this or to do that, and therefore this is not a fair trial. So, being that the case, you could actually appeal. But in the meantime, for some cases, they have been able to do some online hearings, and that's, if you allow me to, that's in court, in a Spanish court.
sure.
So, but I also would like to point out the arbitration scheme, which
Mm-hmm,
I'm working on, because I'm more familiar, and I can tell you that, as you might have heard, it's true that I've seen more flexibility in this aspect. In the end, arbitration does depends on the parties and on the arbitral tribunal as well. So they have been deciding what to do with their cases. In my current practice, considering the disputes I'm dealing with, I can tell you that all of them are still running. And when I say running, it's like the deadlines. We still have to meet the deadlines that we previously agreed, last year with the procedural calendar and everything. But there has been one of these cases which deadlines have been suspended so far till further notice, because we will
mm,
get to see when to hold hearings and when to send submissions. And that's the situation in arbitration. It is true as well that I have not been involved in any online hearing in arbitration, but I know that colleagues of mine have been held in those. And why is it important to point out? Because there is also somehow a discussion as to should every single case be done through online hearings these days. I think it would depend, as usual, because there are cases which are super complex, and the so dense that maybe it's easier for the lawyers and for the witnesses and for everybody to be right in a room, to discuss as usual in 2, 3, or even 4 days. It does depend on the length of the hearing. So I would say that if there is a dispute in which it's a bit lighter, right,
Sure.
and the complexity allows you to somehow hold the meeting by online means, you can do so. And as I know, people, colleagues of mine are doing so, right? And
Sure.
on top of that, Spanish institutions, arbitration institutions here, they have similarly enacted like 2 official announcements, giving some details. And I would like to point out that, of course, there has been like a joint official announcement of leading international institutions such as LCIA, ICC, CIAC, HKIC. Those have said that they are willing to support, assist, and collaborate towards the good ending of the arbitration proceedings or disputes, right? And in Spain, similarly, they have mentioned that they are, I'm talking about CIMA and the CAM, which they have posted some announcements on the media, and they are working, they're telecommuting as well, but still, they're administering the cases. So, as we've mentioned before, deadlines are still going through, but it's true as well that they have suspended the in-person hearings. They have done so, but still the parties are allowed to, if they agree so, to conduct online hearings. But so far, that's the main idea. They would not stop you to go through, and if you agree to proceed by another platform, you can still do so. So that's my opinion and my idea about the Spanish courts on the one side, and then the arbitration scheme here in Spain and in the world somehow.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing the from the litigation from the court system, as well as the from the arbitration system, the system in Spain. Now, I'd like to ask you, Alonso, on the impact on on the businesses in Spain currently during this COVID-19 pandemic.
All right. Yeah. So in order to start delving into this topic, I'd like to mention that Spain, 3/4, I'm talking about 75% of the industry, let's say, it has to do with services in Spain. Services,
Right. Okay.
3/4. That actually gathers not only tourism, but also the financial sector, hospitality, healthcare, etc. But I would like to talk about a bit more about tourism to get to see some numbers to see how the impact might be to the Spanish economy in that regard. So as I say, tourism is very important, and in our country there are 2 insular regions such as Baleares and the Canary Islands, which tourism represents between 35 to 40% of their economies. So it's more than 1/3. I'm talking about, these are big numbers, right? Yeah. And that means that many positions, many jobs do depend on the visitors the islands receive on the tourist industry in this aspect. Therefore, considering that flights are currently cancelled and people are not allowed to travel for joy these days, not in Spain, but not in Europe, not in the world, we foresee, right, that these companies will deeply suffer the consequences of the COVID-19. On top, and these are like some numbers and figures that I'm giving you from the news of the recent days. The INE, the Instituto Nacional de Estadística, which is like a national public source here in Spain, just mentioned that during the first quarter of 2020, 285,000 jobs were destroyed, out of which 275,000, basically everything, does refer to the services sector. So you can see right now the consequences of COVID-19. And in this regard, it needs to be highlighted as well that Spain received almost 84 million tourists last year, 2019. 84 million tourists. The figures, of course, shows the importance of the tourist sector in Spain. And according to data of last August 2019, this sector provided with 2.7 million jobs in Spain, which amounts to 14-15% of the total amount of jobs in Spain. So I think this, unfortunately, this will hit the whole industry, because in the end, if you touch one part of the chain, you will trigger many issues throughout. And if I can talk about briefly 2-3 companies here, now that I was mentioning this thing about the tourism in Spain, I can point out Meliá, which is one of the biggest and most famous Spain hotel chain. Meliá recently announced that they will be closing 49 hotels during this period, out of which 59 hotels, 45 will be shut down in Spain. So there are jobs as well that will be suspended at that time. Same for the financial sector. Banco Santander, which is one of the biggest Spanish bank here, yesterday in their report, they were telling to the world that 91,000 clients have asked for a moratorium of the mortgage debt. And parallelly, the request for new mortgages has decreased at 70%. And this thing of the mortgage debt and the moratorium comes along with the royal legislative decrees that I will later explain, right? But you see that there are already the implications in the business sector of the legal activities are already coming up. But still, this is like not happy news, right? Because this is the situation so far. But I would like to point out on the bright side that, of course, you have to as well take into account that Spain is the first olive oil producer in the world. And there is a company that does deal with olive oil, which is Oleo, and they have at least, for the last quarter, given positive news and positive numbers, as they are now selling more stock. And it might be because we are staying back home, everybody is cooking more than before, everybody is trying to stock up on things that may last longer, and therefore, olive oil have been sold in biggest quantities. And in the end, there are bad situations as well, but there are also positive aspects from different companies in the different sectors of Spain.
I see. Alonso, you mentioned about moratorium to the businesses for their loan payment. Is that something that is compulsory, or is it something that the bank gives it in its own discretion?
Okay, so this is something somehow new, because it's coming along with the you recall at the beginning I said there was the state of alarm declared, and then I mentioned that thereafter, 3 days after, on the 17th of March, the first royal legislative decree was enacted. Right? So this decree was establishing a moratorium of the mortgage debt, which could be applicable. Right. So as long as some criteria is met, the people who might be interested and, of course, are suffering the consequences of COVID-19 may request the bank to, in accordance with this legislation, to apply for a moratorium. It's important that in Spain, that does not mean that the mortgage is going to be cancelled or you don't have to pay that. It's not that way. It's that you will pay that afterwards. You can get the an extension for like 2, 3, 6 months, let's say. And thereafter, if the mortgage was supposed to be finished by 2030 in August, now it will be finished by 2030 in December, right? So that's the point. But still, in the meantime, you don't remove liquidity from the different businesses or from the different families which are now suffering the consequences of the COVID-19.
I see. Now, moving to the businesses where you say that is badly affected at this moment, and I would say that it's a situation that we see worldwide. I think every country around the world is facing this as well. So one of the most important question is about HR and labor. So, briefly, could you tell us what's the legal position in Spain? While businesses are being shut, they cannot operate business. So, employers, do they have the obligation to continue to pay the salary to the staff?
Well, yeah, this is as you mentioned, it's a very hot topic, not only here but everywhere in the world. And yeah, if I can give you some background, we unfortunately were very badly hit back in 2008, 2014 with that Spanish crisis that was coming along from the Lehman Brothers issue till our housing bubble, finalizing with a 100 billion bailout to the financial sector, right? So
Yes.
at that time, we had to change our legislative measures regarding labor law. Labor law again is super trendy right now, especially this thing called here ERTE. Okay, so the ERTE
Erdi.
is ERTE, yeah, which is ERTE. I'd say it's like a temporal suspension of the labor relationship, something like that, right? So everybody's now trying to apply, well, not everybody, but the companies which have been affected their activity, because as I said before, once the state of alarm was declared, many businesses were requested to shut down, bars, restaurants, etc. Many things, everything that you can think of. But basically, some technology startups or companies that can still do telecommuting. So in that regard, if you are requested to be closed, you of course cannot get any money from the outside. Therefore, if you still need to pay money, it's going to be difficult. So the ERTE, as I said before, is a temporal suspension of the labor relationship, but it can also be another way of ERTE, which is like an imposed reduction of the working hours. You have those two things. So if you first go and suspend the labor relationship, that would mean that during that time there should be a notice, right, to the employee. And during that time, let's say during the state of alarm time, or like a 3 months time, 6 months time, depending on what you agree with the employer or what you decide as an employer, the salary, which is not the salary, it's something else that we call here base reguladora, but it's almost the salary, between the salary, the net salary and gross salary, something that we do calculate. 70% of it will be paid by the state, and the employer will have to pay nothing in that regard. But this can also be paid if the different criteria set out by the government is met. If your business has been dramatically hit, and therefore you cannot get any money currently, you may look for this option. As well as I was mentioning, there is an imposed reduction of the working hours, because there are some businesses that still can work, let's say, through telecommuting, but they are not gonna be making the same amount of money that 2 months ago. So maybe the employer can say to the employees, you know what, now you only come to office, telecommute for 4 hours a day, and therefore you get a reduction of your salary.
So law firm will be able to apply as well?
Sorry?
Law firm will be able to apply as well?
Absolutely. Okay. I have colleagues of mine that their work is more focused in daily litigation in courts, in Spanish courts. And as I said, it's been drastically decreased, the amount of work in those areas. So many offices and law firms are already applying ERTES, and it's normal in every single sector.
Right. Okay. ERTE, a temporary suspension of the labor relationship, is something, a new Spanish word I learned today by having a conversation.
It's an acronym, it's not even a word, but yeah, this is something that now in the news, if you Google it up, you will find it, because everybody is discussing how to apply, when I'm gonna get the money from the state, because in the end it's a salary somehow. So yeah, it's a hot topic here.
And the money from the state, how many percent was it? Was it that you mentioned 70%?
70. Yeah, it's not. I said before 70% of the salary, but it's not the salary. It's something that we call base reguladora, which is a figure between, let's say, the gross salary and the net salary. Doing some deductions, whatever, you get up to that amount. So up to that amount, the 70% will be paid. In the meantime, the employee does not work.
Yes.
And it will be for like a 6 months time. And if it needs to be extended, then the employee would only get 50%, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Okay. I think 70% is relatively a high figure compared to what we see in what we have in Malaysia. We do have some government subsidy. And the amount is in between 600 ringgit to 1,200 ringgit per month. And that's only applicable to the employees below 4,000 ringgit. And those are above 4,000 ringgit, they don't enjoy this situation. So when I hear 70%, I think it's relatively high, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's an
Yes.
unfortunate situation, right? But in the end, it's somehow fine. But still, you need to see how you can be eligible. Well, your company can be eligible for the RT 8. There are some requirements to be met, but that's all.
Right. So we have a question.
Yeah.
We have a question from the audience. I think this is an interesting question. Perhaps I put it here. Can Spanish employers ask employees to take COVID-19 tests? So I think this is a question coming to when you want to start work. And so can they actually then does it then affect the Data Protection Act? So I think can they force the employees the employees to take tests?
If the question is whether they can be forced, I cannot even give you a response on that because that's not an area of law in which I work. But as far as I know, and this is something that I can tell you, big companies here, and when I say big companies, they come from Iberdrola, which is electric company, even Inditex. The big ones are already have prepared themselves with a stock of COVID-19 tests that will be, this is what I heard from the news, that will be carried out throughout their employees. So I think that, in this situation, I don't know, and I don't think of anyone who wouldn't like to be forced. I don't know the situation, right? Because in the end, we all want to be collaborative and helpful. But still, even though the employer, right, the big company has prepared this kind of system in order to avoid a further expansion of the virus, if someone does not want to do that, I guess that the company will have to talk with that employee in order to get to understand the situation. But I cannot tell you whether they can be forced. Yeah.
In Spain, is it a problem for many of them to work from home, or is it something very common? It's workable.
I don't think it's very common, but still, in depending on the sector that you work at, it's something familiar, right? If you work in a teleco or a high-tech company, I know I'm talking about friends of mine, right? Who easily every Friday or once in one day a week they are allowed to stay home, or whatever, or they can fly to France to visit a friend and work and do teleworking from that place. But it's not a measure that we daily do in our for our daily tasks. Still, in our office, for instance, we have no issues at all. We have a common server. I guess that maybe many law firms do work in the same way. You have the common server. You have let's say the VPN. You get access to that, and therefore you only need to keep doing calls to either the client or your superior to check whether the argument that you're developing is all right. It's not the same. Of course, it's not the same because I'm used to be talking with you in person, right, and discuss, and you will tell me your argument. And this is something that we need to discuss because this is our field of work. But now that somehow the telecommuting has been imposed, I don't see that many issues. Of course, during the first week, everybody was a bit lost, but now we are very used to, even though, we wish we were back in our normal lives and maybe do this not that often, because in the end, it's interesting to talk with your superiors and with your colleagues to develop an idea or a project, right? But so far, I don't see that many issues.
Right.
What is the punishment? Is there any punishment for violators of the lockdown rules?
If let's say if 2 days ago I wanted to go for a jogging here, right, and suddenly the police would pick me up, I would be receiving a fine. I don't know how big, but maybe 600 euros, 3,000 euros. I don't know. But of course, we've heard as well that there have been people who have infringed this lockdown for a few times. I think that person has already been punished with 4 or 5 months of imprisonment. But I don't know, because in the end,
5 months. Okay.
Yeah, but in the end, if you just infringe the lockdown for like 4 or 5 times, you keep jogging around and you keep doing whatever you want. In the meantime, you have 47 million people. lockdown,
Yeah.
it's like a normal consequence.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
So, moving on, I would like to ask about the businesses where, do they, the companies, do they need to continue to pay rental? Because this will be one of the biggest costs.
As well.
Um, yeah. So, how about rental of the companies during this COVID-19 lockdown where you are not able to operate? So, what's the position in Spain?
Yeah. So here I would mention that there have been many measures, right, which have been implemented recently during these last 6 weeks. But there is one royal legislative decree which is quite tailor-made for this situation, and it's the one of 15/2020 of the
Mm-hmm.
21st of April, basically last week, which I think that was the one dealing with the commercial establishments. And it
Mm-hmm.
provides, as I mentioned before with the first royal decree, that you could actually request a moratorium for your mortgage debt, right? This royal decree as well provides for a moratorium of a maximum of 4 months for the rental payments. Okay.
Mm. Mm.
However, as I mentioned before, the businesses could apply for such moratorium and talk with their landlords and the tenants, get to agree on something else. But in order to be eligible for this mortgage, there is some criteria. Sorry, mortgage for
Mm.
this moratorium. There is some criteria as well that you need to fulfill. Okay, and in the end, if the government is going to give you money to pay these monthly rentals, you will have to give it back. With, of course, there would be like the loan would be on a very beneficial position for the party that is applying for it, but there is an option, and as long as like the criteria in general is like those businesses have been suspended, has been shut down because of the virus, or there has been a fall of more than 75% of the business in comparison with the previous month, right? For instance,
Mm.
you are still a grocery store, but suddenly you are selling almost nothing. Right?
Mm.
You are still entitled to be open, but because of the situation,
Yes.
people are not coming in. So in that event, you would also be able to request this aid in order to take the loan. But this is something
Right.
that was recently passed, and on the, let's say, on the same hand, before we were mentioning the one with mortgage debt, and there is also dispositions with regards to vulnerable homes. So
Yeah.
so far, those issues. I mean, that people that cannot pay because they've lost their jobs and there is no a second home for them, they can still remain in those places, and as long as the criteria as always is met, and there are many and huge vulnerable economical circumstances that would entitle
Mm.
them to stay there and do not change the situation, and that would be in a previous royal decree dated 31st March 2020. But
I see.
at the same time, there have been all these measures putting into consideration. There are many more regarding taxes and making the thing a bit more flexible in order to understand every single scenario that we are now facing.
I see. Because building from what you have said so far, you've said that the country has enacted a few royal decree, the
Yeah.
legislative decree.
Decree.
Yeah, the decree. So, what are the? Is there any other decrees that come into actually specifically to combat or to fight against this COVID-19?
Well, yeah, as such,
Mm,
that comes to my mind. There is no any specific law, like law against the
mm,
COVID-19. It does not exist.
right.
But
Yeah.
as I have mentioned, as time went by,
Yeah.
new scenarios came up, meaning that the
Right.
government has had to rethink about the situation, and therefore pass new royal legislative decrees in order to cater those, or not cater, but to sort those issues. So there are there are a few decrees dealing with the different aspects or the different consequences that the COVID has had on the economy and on the society. And
Mm-hmm.
all these little measures that have been taken do actually compose a big scenario or a big scheme in order to fight against the COVID-19. And it does not only come from the government, but also from our different regions, because Spain is organized in different regions as well, which do also have some authority, some competence in order to rule on one thing or the other. For instance, at the beginning, I said that in March, at the very beginning, the Community of Madrid, the government of the Community of Madrid, it was only the government of Madrid, not the government of Spain, did decide to ask the students to stay home, right? So those are decisions that were also taken by the different regions, and all of those measures that were implemented do compose the whole COVID-19 scheme in Spain.
I see.
And also, yeah, if
Right.
I can mention something, because you were asking as well about whether there are aids, or how are you're gonna make to pay this business establishment, or how are you gonna pay salaries. So at the very beginning, the government, it's true that they announced that they would be putting up a fund worth of 200 billion euros in order to help to the economy, to the people, to the society in the different circumstances, to either buy some healthcare systems, or to provide with salaries to the employees. So the amount of money is huge, out of which 115,000 billion, 115 billion are coming out of the public funds, but in total it's like 200 billion.
200 billion euros is huge. It's
Yeah,
huge.
yeah, and the European Union is discussing for something else in order to be covered,
Yeah.
and those are so far the news that we do have.
Okay.
Right. So I'd like to ask you, Alonso,
Yeah.
what's your view about the future of the legal industry? Looking at this global pandemic, are the lawyers in Spain better off after this? You foresee yourself getting more cases, or is it gonna be a more challenging time? Due to this COVID-19.
Yeah. So I have this is my personal view only, right?
Sure.
And
Sure.
not any technicality, just what I think and what I've seen. Because in the end, my half of my friends and colleagues, they are lawyers, so I get to see what's going on. And as I mentioned before, some of them have received an ERTE, and some not. Like, some of us are still able to work on a normal basis, and even work more than before. Because as you mentioned before, whether we were getting more cases. So far, what I've seen is like more queries, more questions, like, this is my contract, this is what I signed off. We have like a project of this big infrastructure. Now, in some part of the world, it's not only the shutdown, but also, there are some festivities coming up, religious festivities, right? So how are we going to develop the project in the meantime? This is going to be like a force majeure issue. Can I apply for one thing or the other? So these kind of assessments, we've received many
Mm-hmm.
in the last weeks, but this is, I guess, maybe because of the field of law in which I work, which, as I mentioned before, it's arbitration, right? It has to do with disputes and fights with contracts and everything. But coming back again to the question, what's your view about the Spanish legal industry, let's say, future? I think that as it happened 10 years ago, it will
Mm-hmm.
suffer. It will suffer, unfortunately. In my opinion, there might be some fields which would not be that hit, such as labor law and employment, right? Because you need to know, hey, how can I apply an ERTE? These are my circumstances. I want to get an aid from the public funds. How can I do that? Also, something that also was quite famous a few years ago, which was concursal, which is basically insolvency. Because if there is a debt, how you can refinance everything, or how you can organize the whole scheme in order to make it a bit more profitable. And finally, litigation and arbitration, because in the end, this is a field of law which fight for contracts and rights, and there might be a bunch of breaches of contracts coming up. Or if not a breach, it's something that you cannot perform the obligation. So we will see on that hand. And on the other hand, I'd like to mention that this situation, and we have already discussed about it before, but this situation has taken us to a place in which we're all telecommuting, right? We're telecommuting, and it's been always said that the law world has usually been quite traditional, quite even old
Yes.
school, right? That no, we
Yeah.
still need to go this way, courts, the suit, all this. But listen, this COVID-19 is actually showing us a very fresh face of law because we are all using technology, we are all telecommunicating, and those who can still work and no need to pass through the courts, we're still developing our tasks on a daily basis. It's different because we need to give a call and maybe a call with three people on the other side, and we have to unmute ourselves in order to talk. And we love, talking and moving ourselves around. But this is something that we should take into account for the future. That the legal profession, now that it has seen the reality, the unfortunate reality, it might become a bit more flexible in terms of teleworking, because as I know that in many offices that are related to technology and telecos, right, they are allowed to take 1 day a week for teleworking, and you can work from everywhere in the world. It's up to you. You can even, as I said, you can even go and visit your friend in Rome for a weekend, and then you take the flight on Thursday, and on Friday morning you work, and in the end, if you deliver on time, that should be considered, as long as the meetings have been carried out, and you're following the structure. So even though I'm not keen on always staying home, because I do think that our profession needs discussion and needs to, in the end, discuss and talk with clients. From time to time, it would be possible, if you manage to settle meetings 3 days a week, the other 2 days, you can just stay home and, develop the ideas that you have previously discussed in a paper, in a Word document. And then the next morning, hey, boss, this is what I have prepared, this is what I have done. And that would be a great advantage in order to embrace, the working life, and also maybe the family life. That is also a typical discussion topic. Like, I don't have time to see my kids, I don't have time to do this, to do that. Well, in the end, it's not that teleworking or telecommuting does require you to be sitting in the living room or your house from 9 to 7 p.m. No, it's basically taking the job into an objective perspective. So if the deadline is next 14th of May, hey, organize yourself. You don't have to be in office, sitting in the chair while you do nothing. You can just stay wherever you want. You have to deliver that thing to me on time. And those 2 days or 3 that you don't have to come to office, maybe if at 11 a.m. in the morning I want to go to do groceries because I don't have to queue, maybe I can just go, and you don't need to have the supervisor on top of you. So those are some of the...
But do you think that working from home is as efficient?
It really depends,
What is your everyday working from home life like?
I think I have set up like easily 10 alarms. So every 40 minutes, something, pops out, because for me to follow or to do whatever, because otherwise, suddenly I can be here and I can be watching the news, because it's normal that on TV, at least here in Spain, especially for the first week, every 2 hours you had a new update. So you had either the minister, you had someone else, you had the president. So, you were always like interested in getting to know what is going on. So you would always be switching on the TV, and then, you stay like this, watching the TV. In the meantime, the computer is here. So that's a reality, right? And I think it's
yes.
I'm not radical. I'm not like home or office, but to embrace both of them in a very smart way and efficient, it's a win-win situation for everybody. People with families would be maybe happier. It's true that you're not going to work the same way with a kid here that is with you, like, hey, dad, I want to play ball. It's normal. But in the end, that kid will be home that day. That kid will be in the school. So if you organize yourself, you can, as I said before, you can even go to do groceries. You can even pick up some clothes or whatever you need. In the end, it's not like a telecommunicating, but the idea of setting objectives and deadlines. You organize yourself. If you are not organized, and therefore you have to work on a Sunday at 3 a.m. in the morning, that's your issue, because you have had previously the whole week in advance.
Yeah.
But that's an idea. And I think this idea of being flexible and all has to be really established now, and has to be really proved in my field of arbitration. Because it's been always said that in arbitration, it's a great advantage to be able to be flexible. Because if I decide with the other party and with the arbitrator to do something this way or the other, that's something that we will follow, right? So if now ADR is able to overcome the situation by the usage of online means or online platforms, it would clearly set precedents for the future. And people would say, look, I know arbitration has a great advantage. And in case there is an issue going on, they don't stop. They still keep going through. Of course, there might be many different points to consider. As I mentioned before, is the case is super complex and you need a hearing with 70 people. I don't know whether that's going to be super interesting for a party to do it by online means. But I know for a fact that there have been some cases which have been performed with 80 people. I've heard 80 people here in online applications. They were on mute. They were some of them with video, some of them with no camera, and they were still following and recording everything in order to proceed with the hearing. And the hearing was successfully done. So it's something that we should consider because it's an advantage that now the ADR world has, and they should make the most of it to truly prove that you can still proceed even though there is a pandemic going on in the world. So that's what I see,
I see.
more or less.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do agree with you that technology is catching up, and I think legal profession we really have to take this. And you said something very interesting just now, where the profession could be quite conservative before, and having, for example, hard copy and going to the court and everything. It's the books and all this. But I think this COVID-19 pandemic taught us one thing. We have no choice. We are locked at home. We had to find ways to even doing a video conferencing.
Exactly.
I think we got to move on to the new things, and otherwise everything will come to a stop. So we got to find ways to actually deliver our services in the future. I would like to ask Siang, what's your view about working from home? You asked Alonso just now, so we'd like to ask you the same question. Do you think that working from home is as efficient as before, or do you think that it's less got to do with a self-discipline issue, or what do you think about this working from home, the new normal? Changju? Changju, can you hear me?
You asking me?
Yes,
I'm
yes,
sorry.
yes, yes.
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, you asked Alonso just now about
Can you repeat?
working.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. You asked Alonso just now how's working from home. So you would like to hear from you. How are you taking the work from home
Coping.
arrangement? Yes.
Okay. For me, it's not something new for me because I have been doing this for quite even before this starts. So, but the problem in real estate, because I do a lot of companies and real estate matters, is really just we in Malaysia, a lot of things we still have to do physical filings, and we still have to attend to the relevant offices to do to do the registration and a lot of things. So we still have to be flexible, and we have to adopt a lot of the new legal technologies and how fast they are growing, and have to keep up with times and improve ourselves all the time. So I'm always learning and trying to improve as well. So yeah.
All right. So we'll take some time to look at few comments and perhaps some questions from the audience. Um, uh, this would Spain and the rest of the Europe be the same freedom of movement or lockdown on movement affecting workers? Do you think that it will continue?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you a current example because now in the countryside many workers are needed in order to do the harvest, which is they need to pick up many things, and we know that we have like a huge shortage of employees, and this is something that is quite trendy because people are not even able to travel to come here and do some work in order to do the harvest, as I'm saying, and even some communities, some regions are encouraging like to organize flights or even buses to bring people in to collect all the fruits or any products that are currently growing, and there are not enough hands to pick them up, which means that in the end, if you don't pick them up, everything will have to be destroyed because that's an issue. If you ask me whether would Spain still and the rest of Europe be the same, so far I don't think so. I have to be pessimistic because if you ask me as a lawyer and you are a client, I have to tell you no, yeah, for sure. In 2 months' time, we're gonna be totally fine. I don't think so. I'm not a doctor, of course, and I cannot give you any technical details, but just taking a look into the previous pandemic diseases, there has always been, comebacks. And this is something that you have to consider, because if there is a comeback and then you need to establish another lockdown, let's say in 1 month or in 5 months, well, things will get back to this phase zero. But in the end, time will have to pass through, and if we get to have the necessary resources to fight against COVID, the situation will maybe be clearer, maybe like in 6 months or in 1 year. God knows.
Sure. All right. There's another question. Are there any social security benefits for the employee?
Yeah. So before I was mentioning that thing about the ERTE. So the employer can request the ERTE aid for the employee, and therefore that person would get, even though it's not working, would get like a 70% of the roughly salary. All right, we recall that thing. And on top, should you have been fired as such, and you are now unemployed, still there are also some benefits that do come to you. Here we call it el paro, which is the subsidy that you get because of the months that you have been previously working. So measuring those, you may receive one amount or the other up for some time to one more, to depending on the months that you've been working. But those are like benefits that you do have even though you are not working, but they always depend on what you have previously done. All right, and therefore in that aspect there are some aids.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And this will be the last question from the audience. It's a general question. In a televised address to the nation last week, the Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez announced that a gradual lifting of other restrictions will begin in the second half of May, assuming the rates of infection continue to decline. Do you think this is the right time to lift the lockdown? Is this the similar? Yeah.
So again, Richard, thank you for your question. I'm gonna be super politically correct in this answer because is going on about the current management of the situation in many different countries. So if you ask me honestly, I would say that as long as those COVID tests are prepared and people have been organized to take them, so we know who's going to be sick, who's going to be who is sick or who's not, and so you can lock them down, I think it's normal to start to think of a comeback to the normal activity. Of course, I understand that situation that was yesterday night explained, in which we have 4 phases and gradually we will be allowed to do more and more things. I find it logical and I find it normal because, as Richard has mentioned in his question, as long as the number of cases keep decreasing, because if suddenly there is like a comeback, we will get back to our unfortunate reality of the last weeks. But I understand that, especially if those tests have been prepared and now we have a much more, unfortunately again, prepared healthcare system for COVID-19, because now even hospitals are addressing and are preparing different floors or different areas of an hospital only for this kind of patients, right? So taking into account that this is now something that we have been doing during the last almost 2 months, so I understand that the comeback to reality is somehow organized. Of course, I see that there might be health issues and still people would get infected. But in the end, people would need to balance, whether we should always remain home for 2 years till the virus is gone, or we should go back to the normal life and, get infected slowly. Some people would have big issues, unfortunately. Some others will just pass it thanks to the healthcare system. And that's it. That's my opinion.
Sure. All right. I think that's the time that we have for today's session. So I'd like to invite I think both speakers to do a concluding remarks. Perhaps we start with Siang. What do you think to sum up the discussion today? Could you hear us?
Yeah, actually, our timeline with Spain is very similar. We are also at the fourth phase now, and we yesterday it was announced that we are actually at our recovery phase, and a lot of our students in the higher education institutions have also been sent back to their house after 2 months being stuck in their hostels. So I hope that I think that things are getting better, and I hope we will be able to travel soon and to travel to Spain to see Alonso soon.
Exactly,
Sure.
that would be lovely.
Very good. Yes, Alonso, your concluding remarks?
Yeah, so there have been many issues lately, and not only in Spain, but in every single part of the world.
Sure.
But I would like to point out that there have been also some sparkling circumstances, such as the generosity of the society, how everybody has been working in order to fight against this virus. And this is one of the things that I would like to keep in mind, not for now, but forever, because in the end, the humanity has been able to keep closer, and we understand each other better than before. The empathy is super developed right now. And we hope we can overcome all these legal issues. We hope we can overcome all these economical issues as soon as possible. There is always a bright side, right? And we have to just hold tight to it.
Sure. All right. With that, I'd like to thank
Right.
Alonso again. Thank you for your time, for joining us all the way from Madrid in this morning in Madrid's time, and this evening now in Kuala Lumpur. And
Mhm.
also thank you, Siang for joining us this discussion. I know two of you have known each other. It's good to see friends to come out
Yes.
to this
Exactly.
platform, to friends who come on this platform to discuss and also to have a chat on how's the situation like. And this is the aim, and for us to have this CALCC COVID-19 law series. For those who are joining us, all the viewers are watching us online now. Thank you so much, and you have been our inspiration to keep continuing. We are only halfway through. Then there are lots of interesting lineup. Tomorrow we will have our speaker from Italy joining us, and the day after we have our friends from Korea speaking to us in a similar platform. So I think we are taking this time to connect with each other on this. And Sangju, you got something else to add?
Can I? Can I? Yes. Can I just say also, Alonso, thank you a lot. Thanks a lot
Yeah.
for agreeing to speak and to share with us. And I would really like to apologize because my line is actually breaking over here, so it's not that interactive. So I actually having problem listening. This is one of the problems of working from home, I guess. So yeah, thanks and really sorry. Yeah,
No
Yeah, and
worries. No
thank
worries.
you.
if I can say also thank you, not only to you, Dato, and also to you, Xianju, but also to the China ASEAN Legal Cooperation Center for this event, for having invited me. And if any of you or if any of the viewers need anything or any more feedback, you can always contact me. You can easily look for my name, I guess, on Google or something, and then you will be able to reach me out. And I'll be happy to help, and very glad to be back in Malaysia through this mean.
Sure. Welcoming you back again soon, Alonso. All right. Thank you so much again.
Yes.
Gracias. Gracias in
Exactly.
Spanish. And
Terima
today I
kasih.
learned
Terima kasih, bro.
terima kasih. We learned few
Yes.
Spanish words. Hola, gracias, and erte today. All right. Thank you so much again. And we are signing off for today's session. See you tomorrow
See
for
you.
Italy session. Thank
Thank
you and
you.
bye
Thank you
bye.
very
Bye
much.
Bye.
bye. Bye bye.
Bye.